Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to Moving Forward. Tonight, if I sound angry, do forgive me because I'm not in a happy frame of mind, as I find it hard to understand how our people can be so naive not to realize when blatant racism is being portrayed before their very eyes and noses. My angriness is what they do, and that is to laugh and clap in agreement. Why? Because they fail to understand that they are being seen as morons by the individual who tries to perpetrate division and evil to achieve power, regardless of the cost. I say this in all sincerity. It is not me that tries to divide, but to be the ardent supporter of the truth, because it will always set me free. This is my view, and it is the heights of gross ignorance, and even those who should know better seem to be carried away by such occasions. Therefore, I'm in awe and cannot sit back and not make every effort to condemn this stupidity and ignorance that still prevails in this country of ours. St. Lucians, I call upon you in all sincerity to release yourselves from mental slavery. You will certainly not die if you don't eat. You remember those words? This is made by a minister under the Alan Chastanet administration. If you're crying, then you have a lot of crying to do. More so, as I said, in 2:16 to 2:21, we heard this. This infuriated me because it seems as if we have moved one step forward and 10 steps backwards. How gullible are we? So what the leader of the opposition as prime minister was adamant that 43% of our people are mendicants, that some are jackasses and barking dogs that bray. Quite possibly, he hit the nail on the head when one considers the attitude of some. Before I allow my emotions to get the better of me, let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Oh, Father, in heaven, as always, we come to you to help us in bringing peace and tranquility on this beautiful island that you handed down to us. Give the Prime Minister the help and strength he needs to bring about the unity that we desperately need in the political arena. Therefore, send down the Holy Spirit once again to guide those who are still in the dark and bring them back into the light. Your son Philip will never let you down. Therefore, we know that you will do all you can to help him in his pursuit to put the country back on course. You are without a doubt the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings, and the Lord of Lords. Amen. Tonight I quote from the Bible, Sirach 6 verses 13 to 17. Stay away from your enemies and be on guard against your friends. A loyal friend is like a safe shelter. Find one, and you have found a treasure. Nothing else is as valuable. There is no way of putting a price on it. A loyal friend is like a medicine that keeps you in good health. Only those who fear the Lord can find such a friend. A person who fears the Lord can make real friendships because he will treat his friends as he does himself. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Ladies and gentlemen, at one of the UWP meetings, Guy Joseph said that I want to show you something. You see this man there? And he was pointing to a huge picture of Alan. His words then were quite emphatic. How anybody can give up a leader of this class for an embarrassment like this man? Then he showed a smaller sized picture of Philip. He went on to say that every time PJP opens his mouth, he is an embarrassment to St. Lucia. It is not just the Labour Party, but the country. I ask a particular deacon, is that not dividing the country? I'm a political scientist and therefore see things in that light. Also, I'm a social psychologist. It is not my duty to split the country, but to look to see what we can bring and how we can bring it together. I tell you this, you nincompoop. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt in my mind that Guy was clearly coming out with a form of racism when showing the pictures of Alan as being huge and a color that cannot be defined. And then the smaller size picture of Philip, who is without a doubt the color we can identify with as black. Guy, in that regard, thinks that he is the smaller version of Alan and is desperately trying to be so in what he says and do. However, what he cannot get into his thick skull of his is that we all know who this black man is, because we're all proud of him in St. Lucia, if we are true St. Lucians. Maybe Guy Joseph is not. He seems to like bowing to anything that is of a lighter shade of pale. Did he not want St. Jude to be privatized by the lighter shade of the Cayman Islands group? And more so, they are foreigners, as alleged. How low can you go, more so, to try and use a form of racism against the Prime Minister of this country? This guy, in my view, has no class. He's unable to speak English correctly so that he can be understood. My friend, stop throwing stones when you live in a glass house. Why? Well, my friend, because those stones may come back to smash your glass house to smithereens. Without a doubt, in my estimation, he sounds like a moron. And regardless of what is said, I see him as an uneducated man, more so by his behavior. He simply has no manners or class. Walking out of the house showed that clearly. Not only that, what he said to a journalist, in that he does not speak to criminals, or words to that effect. Later, he also somewhat insulted the Choice reporter on the issue of passports. Yet he has the gall to insult the Prime Minister when he was the biggest insult to St. Lucia as a minister and now deputy leader of a now defunct party. This is the same individual who wanted the government, together with his Prime Minister then, to break diplomatic relations with Taiwan, if, as allegedly said, that they were asking for $2 billion, in that the country would borrow $1 billion from China, and the Chinese government would give another $1 billion in aid. This was turned down because, from my sources, the Chinese hierarchy just laughed at them and saw them as an embarrassment. Oh yes, my friend, you were the embarrassment. Maybe when you open your mouth because you sounded like a country bookie, as we call it. Ladies and gentlemen, do we forget that Alan and Guy did not respect the House Speaker, chosen by them in the House? Their policy was to say to the Speaker to do as we say, or we simply kick your backside out. One lady suffered that fate because she stood her ground. These are the reprobates who thought that colonialism had a conscience. Can anyone believe that this nonentity, who can't even speak English properly, seemed to prefer a man with lighter skin who simply have done nothing for the country but to put us in debt? Ladies and gentlemen, compare this to a black one who is doing everything in his ambit to ameliorate the situation. Honestly, the mind boggles. On another occasion, the leader of the opposition had the gall to make the statement in the House that this government has made a habit every time they come to the House. It is a new set of borrowing. Oh, pity these guys. What he fails to put into his thick and childish head is that much of the borrowing is being done because he left the country in a mess, and a financial mess at that. The narcissist went on to say that the government is less than 1 year. In 1 year has borrowed more money than we borrowed during the epidemic. He didn't say the 5.5 years, when we had no growth. Therefore, what we have is a recovery. That's what he's calling it. GDP has contracted by 24%, and therefore we are not back to where we were in 2019. I'm sure he has a muddled brain, because he was simply saying anything that came out of his mouth, and they are simply not based on facts. What the jackass failed to comprehend is that when his government took office in 2016, there was growth, and further to that, crime was down. but began to rise substantially under his watch. And then we had COVID-19 that came along. Therefore, the crime levels decreased, but was being incubated as his government made the country and the people poorer. He left office in 2021 when COVID-19 was still abound and hovering. However, on going back to normal, all hell broke loose, as his government had left no money, only broken down government buildings, etc. A dam that got worse instead of better. The incinerator that cost an arm and a leg was never used. 1 million was spent for a report on St. Jude, yet no work was done for 3 years under their jurisdiction. Alan, the list goes on, with the DSH fiasco, together with that of the CIP dealings with the Range Project, the bringing in of Galaxy to St. Lucia, and hence this in itself antagonized the fraudster Martinez, who now have a double target, which points to Galaxy, whom Allen brought into St. Lucia in 2017, or thereabouts. I'm bringing all this to the fore, ladies and gentlemen, because St. Lucians, you on the whole have a short memory. And I simply don't want you to forget the facts, more so when the opposition continues to lie to you, the people, on all fronts. This is an opposition that loves to spread alarm and despondency. They're without a doubt pervasive and somewhat narcissist. They even now seem to have another arrow to their bow, as I said before, that of racism. I firmly believe that there must be equity in our society, and that is what the leader of the opposition fails to comprehend, and which Sir John Compton knew all about, because he knew what hard work was about. What some would not be aware of is that in his early years, as I've said before, he went to Curacao when times were hard as far as the level of unemployment in St. Lucia was concerned. He, together with my father and others, went to Curacao as painters. The present leader of the opposition doesn't know what hard work was all about. And he has mentioned before that he was a product of Canada. St. Lucians, I don't want you to ever forget that he saw at least 43% of you as mendicants, jackasses, barking dogs. Shakespeare once wrote that goodness is seen with the eye of the understanding and the light of reasoning. This individual was not able to open his eyes sufficiently to understand what Shakespeare was talking about. Aquinas points out that humanity is bounded by its capacity to reason. That was simply beyond Allen and his reprobates. How can these reprobates of the United Records of the Poor be able to reason when they simply don't know the difference between a lie and what is true? They are without a doubt a lost cause, as they are barefaced and simply lacking an ounce of integrity. The same way we cannot change history, it is the same way we cannot change the leaders and followers of the United Records of the Poor. It is indeed, if I am to say so, that it is commendable that the Labour government that came into power in 2021 took time in taking a methodological and scientific approach in assessing the state of the St. Lucian economy and its finances. This is with a view to getting the information necessary to plan and implement its proposed policies and programs. Is at this juncture, I'll take my first break and I'll be back. Welcome back to Moving Forward. Magadul Oswea Mwefache. And I was talking about policies and plans and to implement its policies and programs which the government has to do. Even now, they're looking for funding for projects as far as the infrastructure is concerned. What the public have to come to terms with, and that is, rightly so, is that in their debilitating wilderness of its time in opposition, they did not have access to up-to-date information on the state of the economy and of the public finances or purse. That, without a doubt, the previous government was well aware of. So when they were talking, as the leader of the opposition did in the House some time ago, it is, in my view, sheer poppycock, and was simply dishonest about what he had to say. Therefore, when the present government came into power, they were not mistaken when they proposed government prudence in acquiring knowledge about the true state of the economy and of the public finances. That was in order to get an indication of what is possible, and more importantly, to determine what corrective policies and institutional actions are necessary to dramatically improve the public finances and prevent reoccurrences of avoidable practices which may have created problems in the economy. That is why I find it strange that a party and government who are familiar with CIP can quickly come all out to be the critique of this government. They therefore knew that there was some of the acute problems they had left behind. What I'm seeing without a doubt is that the people who overwhelmingly chose the Labour Party in 2021 to govern this country then are demonstrating trust and confidence in their government by showing patience and understanding, even though they are faced with the realities of deferred dreams and suspended promises. They have come to realize that Rome was not built in a day, and they are seeing a lot of work being done by this government. Just think about it. Unemployment is down to 10%. The Prime Minister is sincere when he says that he wants that to fall even lower. The last governments basically left nothing behind, and in theory did not accomplish much in the 5.5 years in office. When the United Records of the Poor was in government, what we saw was some of the poorest people of the country were like disinherited sons and daughters and children whose plight was desperate. However, I say this emphatically, let us not dwell on the pillage to which it was subjected to during the years between 2016 and 2021. What must not happen is that those to come don't feel the effects of what took place under the last government. Therefore, this government is doing its utmost best to bring back a sense of sanity and reality into the country. What we also saw during those years was the selfish and short-sightedness which transmitted to a blind eye to the alleviation of poverty. One would have thought that it was incumbent on each and every one of us at a time when unity was needed and all we had was an opposition that cares. All they seem to want to bring to the fore is an election as quickly as possible in the hope that there lies a narcissism in causing alarm and despondency will bring out hatred and violence to the country. I say to them that if they thought so, then they are living in a fool's paradise. If the milestone of unity could have been achieved then, the genesis of an integrated society and that of all its various strands would interweave and serve the common good of all our people in this fair land of ours. In going back to the meeting that the United Records of the Poor had in the Boulevard on the 22nd of September 2024, the deputy leader of the party was asked some questions. And instead of answering in an intelligent manner, he was more concerned about insulting the reporters of St. Lucia. This infuriated me and had me feeling somewhat distraught, when in truth and in fact, here is the same individual who in the House told the Speaker that he had to do what he wants, because as he will not withdraw a derogatory statement he should not have made in the Honorable House. He was asked to not repeat that question and to apologize, which he didn't. And to show the stupidity of the man, he preferred to walk out of the House. There is no doubt in my mind he should have been censored by being banned from the House for a period of time. The coup de grace of that meeting is when the leader of the opposition said quite categorically that he will demand that the government gives him figures in terms of crime figures, in terms of crime. Not only that, but how they have spent monies. Here is an ex-prime minister making an ass out of himself because statements like that, and simply, he simply forgot that when he was in power, he shared no information with the opposition then, except what he had to say in the House. In the country where colonialism had a conscience, on a Monday, you have Prime Minister's question time, and answers have to be given as the opposition puts the questions forward. This former Prime Minister broke the rules when it suited him. Did he not put a prohibition to stop people being outside the House during a sit-in? This is the same individual who went behind a police motorcycle, and I've mentioned it before, without a helmet on. This is the same guy who broke all the rules in terms of government regulations, more so the Constitution, in order to funnel monies out to his associates in order to buy vaccine at a cost of $7.3 million. To date, never delivered. He's the one talking about the vaccine. What a weave this individual weaved. But what was upsetting about that deal, apart from breaking the laws of finance, was that the individual who were given the money for the drugs had never dealt in this form of drug buying and selling. If we remember, Barbados made it clear that they want to see the drugs first, but not Ireland. The same person who allowed the old prison to be knocked down, having given the National Trust the assurance that this will not be done without them being involved, yet he and others went on to break down the building to suit their purposes. This is the same person who supported fully the Fortuna Doctrine. This is an ex-prime minister who literally starved the poor in the country, more so the Castries East constituency, of any support. And now he's talking about this government and its treatment of the poor. Balderdash to that. The facts are there to prove what I'm saying to you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Some of us are not blind and therefore can see facts from fiction. He also had the audacity to be talking about crime, which I have explained before, that when he was simply not interested in trying to ascertain why crime was rising, his deputy leader, not to trust the governor he said not to trust the governor of the Caribbean banking system, who was there not too long ago, in terms of unemployment level that he gave, making it look as if it is none of his business. Can you believe that? The impression he seemed to be given is that the government is in collusion with the governor of the Bank of the Caribbean, Chef Poppycock, because the majority of the United Records of the Poor, more so the upper echelon, seem to face the truth because they only serve on lies, propaganda, misinformation and disinformation. They like to distort everything that seems real and true to them. They are the type of people who would like to win an election by mere distortion of the facts and the truth. There is no doubt that when the ex-Prime Minister explained the meaning of con merchant, he did not realize that he was talking about himself and the party he leads. What a nincompoop. What I've seen of the rat bag of the opposition party is to make every effort in playing a psychological game, in making the effort to blame this government for everything that was wrong or is wrong in the country when they were in power. They have not looked at all the good things that this government has done to put St. Lucia back on his feet. Their problem is that their 2.5%, which seems to be their talking point, that is the opposition, or gas prices, when they simply did not care before. Do they care now? Because of one of their members has lots of buses on the road. Do we forget that? Not only that, many of us should have asked why the bus drivers had nothing to do with the lady who was in charge at transport at the Ministry of Infrastructure. The question is, who was she? Where is there a family link? Also, was the lady then qualified for the job? These are pertinent questions. On the list of their last government's misdemeanors is monumental, and it is like an encyclopedia. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you this in all sincerity, that listening to Alan Chastain's poodle talking in terms of St. Jude, I feel a form of disgust that I have never felt before in my lifetime. It seems like as though it was an excruciating pain that was engulfing my whole body. This guy Joseph showed that he was truly an individual whose mind and reasoning was from the sewers, and the thought that this reprobate was representing his constituency for such a long period of time. That has baffled me. He simply has no respect for anyone. In my mind, two small brats in mind are leading the United Wreckers of the Poor. One is tall and lumpy. The other one is short and diminutive in size. We must never forget the way he spoke to the reporter outside the House. When in power, he used words to the effect that I don't speak to criminals. Can you believe that? And now we see him once again using words that are unacceptable when a question was put to him, relevant question, by a Choice reporter on the 22nd of September 2024. He once again showed scant disrespect. That little poodle of Ireland showed no charisma, no tact or diplomacy in the way he answers questions from reporters. He acts as if the reporters are below his level of intelligence. But what did upset me is that the question was relevant and significant. This is the caliber of politicians we have in the United Wreckers of the Poor. They are very arrogant and obstreperous in the way they disrespect people because of their big heads. That is why the asses were kicked out of office. I'm of the view that if the individual does not want to answer a question that is put to him, that is his prerogative. However, he has no right to be abusive in the manner he speaks to the reporters. Good manners make a man, I'm told. But that is not one of his trademarks. This is the same man who took 2 to 3 years to recommence the rebuilding project in terms of St. Jude. He took 1 year to sit on $1 million report that today few have seen. The question is, was that a payback? Only time will tell. Now, after being kicked out of office, he thinks he has the right to give a cock and bull story advice by his explanation to the work being done at St. Jude. And he said that if 3 shifts were put into operation, the project could be finished quickly. Poppycock. He did not see that when he was building his box of tricks, wasting taxpayers' money, much of which was borrowed money. It showed that this individual is the biggest fake that exists, together with his leader, or is simply putting on a show to fiddle monies out as has been alleged. I will take a break there because, I feel hot tonight, too hot in fact. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And ladies and gentlemen, we must never forget the fiasco with the Taiwanese embassy, with dealings that incorporated his partner. There was without a doubt egg on the face of the Taiwanese embassy, having to pay twice on a grant. Before I end tonight, I want to point out a few trademarks of good and competent leader. I bring this to the fore because it was a trait the last Prime Minister seems oblivious to, because he was simply not a leader. Much of his popularity and rise to leadership was without a doubt his color and who his father is or was. A leader, in my view, makes everyone feel valuable. Leaders are also visionary and do not take risks, but not on the idea of bringing what he termed the sport of kings when the country had a level of poverty that had to be dealt with first. Alan, in my view, was not a visionary leader. He was simply not inspirational, because if he was, the Fortuna Doctrine would never have been accepted. This guy, in my view, was simply a poor communicator. I'm sure when he was at Air Jamaica, he was useless at communicating the objectives that is required. Even when he speaks at present, one can see that he lacks communication skills. True leaders love people, but this guy loved family, friends, and some foreigners. Therefore, he only speaks to a certain class. Did he not tell us or say that his class did not vote for him at the last election? Alan did not realize that as a leader or prime minister, he had to show that he really cared about people. And that is what Philip Joseph Pierre is good at. Why? Because in the end, it is the people that will help to give or to give you or keep you in power, or get you out of power, just as they did to Alan, hopefully never to return. We have witnessed some skullduggeries of practical politics in our country, so much so no one trusts or respects the word of a politician. While he was Prime Minister, one saw some of the most disastrous errors of policy in recent St. Lucian political history. And before people distrust them. His characteristics did not show any statesmanship, because he appears to be morbid and pathological. I personally doubt his technical efficiency and every sort of idiocy going on behind the scenes, more so when he and his deputy come together. It is therefore unlikely that those who talk so much nonsense will act quite differently. It is very probably that given time, they will overplay their hands, overreach themselves, especially on CPI, and make a major blunder. It is in the nature of their type of behavior that this should happen. In my view, sooner or later, they will fall out among themselves. The unity government, in my view, must have the guts and determination to rise up against the propaganda churned out day after day. This, in my view, is a propaganda which in a sense is accustoming the country to the idea of the inevitability of violence. We need to develop a social system in which we have a country devoid of violence and not perpetuated by politicians who yearn for the power they lost. Tonight I say to all St. Lucians, that the time has come for us to open our eyes, more so in the country we now live in. They must come to the realization that mere words is not enough, and that it must be made with stuff that is sterner than mere words. It is necessary now, as it was in the past, to look behind the words of individuals, to find from their actions what their true purpose is. We must never forget the feeble words of Five to Stay Alive and how it worked on our minds. Only con artists can come up with such feeble words, more so when they're applied none in all sincerity. This I call sheer dishonesty at the highest level. The same way we are seeing the propaganda of the CIP when it was they who brought it in. It was they who broke the rules and regulations. It was they who brought in Galaxy to St. Lucia. I say this tonight in all sincerity, that our political parties should not abandon belief in their own creed. It is only necessary that it should abandon the attempt to spread its own creed by force or relentless propaganda that has become vile and sometimes outrageous and condescending and even sometimes insulting. I therefore tonight, quite categorically, in my frame of mind, that they have they must absorb my inner soul and recall that the American Declaration of Independence, of which Martin Luther King reminded us of. And that is, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with a certain inalienable rights, and that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure those rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of government. I bring this to the fore to remind the leader of the opposition that he should reflect on these words when he had the audacity to call citizens of this country, more so voters, mendicants, Shaka says, or barking dogs that bray. He should without a doubt leave our politics forthwith, together with his band of merry men and women that I saw on the 22nd of September in the Boulevard. I believe that without a doubt some of their language was somehow, to me, unbecoming, because they were simply spreading propaganda without facts or figures to justify the statements that they were making against the government. In my view, it is totally unacceptable. We should be grown-ups by now, and as political parties, to concentrate on policies instead of propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, and further to that, looking for all ways to cause alarm and despondency. When Alan as Prime Minister failed to inculcate in his brain that the leaders really care about people, what Alan and his poodles failed to come to grips with is that competence, skill, and intelligence are all important attributes for leadership. But there is one greater, faith. Truly, great leaders believe in someone greater than themselves, and they express that belief in regular times of reflection and devotion. And that has been part and parcel of one we call Philip Joseph Pierre. Throughout his life, he always seeks the guidance of the One Most High. I say to all concerned that their time of prayer should signify a spiritual relationship with the Almighty that makes them feel accepted and loved, even when their associates or peers have abandoned them. To them, prayer is not a way out, it is a way through. The strength that is derived from communication with God sustains them through times of adversity. A true leader never lets adversity get him down except on his knees. That is why during my time on this program, I've always made the time to give praise and thanks to the One Most High. In my honest opinion, the value that the United Records of the Poor have shown over the 5.5 years in office and just over 3 years in the wilderness shows without a doubt that they are devoid of it. It comes over too easily, shallow and hypocritical. going back to the last government, what they created for themselves was a society that had grown complacent, selfish, and in some respect decadent, because nothing was being built to bring about developing society or country. They deprive in their action the poor and the very poor of the country. And today they want to come back to make it look as if it is this government who don't care about the poor. There is no doubt in my mind, and many others, both here and abroad, that under the prime ministership of Philip Joseph Pierre, there is certainly a stone of hope, one that will bring us back to the top of the economic ladder, also to the top of the Eastern Caribbean. He has the ability and capacity to mend the jungling discord of our society or nation into a true brotherhood, which is a reality. William Cullen Bryant was right. The truth crust the earth will rise again. And in our case, it is the eternal will of the Almighty because of Philip Joseph Pierre. I said this to those who are unaware, that Philip came to the realization many years ago as deputy leader that no man is an island, and therefore we must all be part of the making. Ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you that under Philip, I have faith in the future of our country. I have long come to the realization that truth will forever be on the throne, and that is why the lies, misinformation, disinformation, and the blatant alleged corrupt practices of the opposition, of always wanting to blame this government for their misdeeds and what they never did, is now being done. Therefore, I say to them, in every sense of the word, for whom the bell tolls. So I say to them, comrades of the United Records of the Poor, I tell you this, that it is for thee that the bell tolls at the next election, because you will be simply wiped out. I'll take the next break and I'll come back. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And as I was saying, now I see their leader is going to Mico North and showing us the beauty of the area. Therefore, I simply ask why he and his bald-headed representative and family did not see the beauty of the place then when he was the prime minister and she was the representative for the constituency. Because she took the seat for granted. That is why she collapsed when she heard that she had been whopped or beaten to the pulp. Ladies and gentlemen of this beautiful country, I once again say to you in all honesty that now is the time to shake and break off the colonial shackles that seem embedded in us by having our own identity. This colonial hangover and simple claptrap cannot continue even in our own house of assembly and our police force. I keep bringing the subject to the fore because I never want you, the people of St. Lucia, to ever forget that a leader of this country had the audacity to tell us that colonialism had a conscience. When Alan fails to realize, what he failed to realize is that all communication needs to be built on a cornerstone of facts. In other words, let the facts speak for themselves. But that was lacking in him because he lies so much that he sometimes forgot what he said before. Brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we are living in a post-truth era. In 2016, when the last government came into power, the Oxford English Dictionary named post-truth as its word of the year, defining it as relating to our donating circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion, that appeals to emotion and personal beliefs. Therefore, to get to the truth, our citizens should cultivate the ability to find factual evidence in complex data and information which issues from the media and the opposition party are put into the public domain. Our people should have the means and ways to understand and discuss all sides of the issues, and so bringing them closer to the truth. I tell you this, brothers and sisters, emphatically, that the leader of the opposition is like a flamethrower, which is pointed in all directions with his continuous lies and misinformation. Therefore, I call upon you to beware, because you are liable to get burnt badly if you are not careful. Before I end tonight, I want to take issue with an article that was written in the Voice newspaper on Saturday, the 28th of September, 2024. I took umbrage to the article more so because it was about China and Taiwan. Therefore, in my opinion, the individual concerned, before making his statements, should in all sincerity go back and check the history of those two countries. Even in prehistoric times, when they were joined and nature decided to split them into two countries. Lots of the answers can be found there. Not only that, there were 21 indigenous tribes in Taiwan. That is why they found it difficult to have one ruler, because they spoke different languages and their cultures were slightly different. There is a saying to look before you leap and think before you speak. And therefore, this is my advice to anyone who wants to make statements or write articles about Taiwan, China. However, I do recognize that there is a saying, to each his own or her own, more so if they are being paid in what they write and say. My own payment was acknowledged by the Taiwanese people. Is twice been a research fellow at prestigious research institutions in the world and acquiring a diploma in Asian studies. Even Chairman Mao Zedong, before the civil war against the leader of the country then, Chiang Kai-shek, made it clear that Taiwan was an independent country. And it's only when he defeated Chiang Kai-shek, he saw Taiwan as being part of China, but never ever made a move towards Taiwan. It was Chiang Kai-shek who was making plans to return to defeat Mao, but was using the aid money from America to build up his military capacity to defeat Mao. It was not until the American president made it clear to Chen that if he should continue in that vein, then the aid, which was phenomenal then, would be stopped. Well, Taiwan needed the aid, and it was then that Chiang decided to pull away from his thoughts of going back to China. But he decided to sever any relationship with the mainland, even for families. Further to that, there was the severe restrictions on the public, which was autocratic in Taiwan in nature, which led to violence and some executions, more so from the 2/28 incident. Well, the people of Taiwan lived through a period of autocratic rule by Chiang to what they are today, with free elections and one of the nations that follows the United Nations principles to its fullest, even though not being part of the UN. Therefore, we as a democracy, I stress, diplomatic friends of Taiwan must do everything in our power to help them achieve their goals of returning to the United Nations as Taiwan or Formosa. When China was allowed into the United Nations, Chiang Kai-shek was given the opportunity to continue under the name of Taiwan. He refused because of his obstinacy, insisting that it is as China he will return because there is only one China. I thought that the article was outrageous and unnecessary at a time when sovereignty tensions are at new heights. We know that the USA, with its 6 assurances, will not allow China to dictate their will on Taiwan's people, and that the Taiwan people have rights also. We also see Japan flexing its muscle on the South China Sea and East China Sea issue, together with the Philippines, Vietnam, and even Malaya, Indonesia, and Australia, will do all it can to assist Taiwan should China flex its muscle. However, at this juncture, global warming and climate change do have had severe effect on the whole world, but the evidence is showing that China seems to have been devastated by weather conditions over the last year or so. So living standards are diminishing at an alarming rate. I therefore sympathize with China, and Chinese people, that is, and therefore they should and those who write in the papers should consider the plight of both the Chinese people and the Taiwanese. Well, back on the home front, I heard some United Records of the Poor seem vociferous in their belief that their lies will win the next election. They seem cock-a-hoop and believe that their psychological ploy will have people to turn their backs on the unity government and even don't vote. There is no doubt in my mind it is wishful thinking. And they are living on another planet and refuses to face the fact that the voters of this country don't want Alan and his band of merry men and women back to lead this country. Philip Joseph Pierre is pulling St. Lucia from the brink, and we should be celebrating in that from the 1st of October, when the lowly paid people of this country was officially given that minimum wage, which is now lawful. So much has happened to help the poor people of this country that they are now relaxed faces when you go out in the public domain. There is no doubt things will improve for them. We are beginning to see a sign of dignity and self-esteem returning, even in the footsteps of those who suffered 5.5 years under United Records of the Poor. I want to tell even churchmen that I think more of country than party. Therefore, I'm a patriot, just like my father, who was at the embryonic stage of the trade union movement. He helped 3 of them to form the trade movement in St. Lucia. While colonialism had no conscience, I'm a man of God and not of man. So I'm guided by the one Most High. I'm answerable to no one or woman, no man or woman, but to our God Almighty. So I close tonight and ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to think of Taiwan and parts of China who have been hit by a severe Category 4 typhoon. We hope and pray that they will get over it by the grace of the One Most High. This is another signal that climate change is upon us, as the whole world is now feeling the brunt, even in the Sahara Desert. Once again, I could not close tonight by not asking again to the leader of the opposition to account for the $7.3 million he literally gave away in trying to buy COVID-19 vaccines or tablets from an individual who never dealt in buying and selling drugs. Not only that, but to break the law, government policies and procedures. Not only that again, he was given nothing in return, yet he handed out the country's money as if it was confetti. On another front, how can any prime minister go into a deal with a firm which was accepted by all parties, signed and delivered on the deal with Range, and for whatever reason break the deal? We need to be given a reason. What it means to me is that you are not fit to lead this country when we now have to pay a heavy compensation to the company we call Range. Now that has put us in heavy debt, and therefore another noose to our government's head, or neck. So is that deal with DSH and Tiwa King. This, in my view, will be burdensome, and therefore the government must make it clear that we want to know how much CIP monies are sitting in a bank in China. No one seemed to know, because it was only when the last prime minister informed us in his cover-ups that the country got to know about this shady deal. In my view, it seems as if the last government mode of doing business left a lot to be desired, more so where the Prime Minister and Minister of Economic Affairs are concerned, because it is alleged that there was a lot of scandalous deals made that leaves a lot to be desired. The present government, in my estimation, must have people in place at this juncture investigating the misdemeanors that took place in concocting those deals that was disadvantageous to this country and the people. Well, once again, I've tried to be honest, because to be honest is to confront the truth, however unpleasant and inconvenient the truth may be. Brothers and sisters, I say to you tonight, to always have faith in the one Most High, but also have faith in Philip Joseph Pierre, and never to forget that we were born black, and that we should be proud of that. So I say to you tonight, good night, and we will meet again next week. So take care and God bless you. Good night and good night.